9:09. Thanks for checking in. You are listening to us on the Big 550 KTRS Radio. You can download our app, which is a great way to listen to the show anywhere in the entire world. You can watch us on television, KPLR channel 11.2 if you have an HD antenna. We are now broadcasting with on TV, our last hour. Also, that's channel on the charter system 187, and of course online at ktrs.com. You can watch the TV show, listen to the radio, and you can also watch us and listen to us at stltoday.com, the home of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Our next guest has been on the show numerous times. He wrote what I think is one of the best baseball books around called The Soul of Baseball. He was on talking about that. He also wrote the book Paterno. That happened to come out just as that Joe Paterno scandal was breaking. His newest book is called The Secret of Golf. He is a writer for Sports Illustrated, also a former writer for the Kansas City Star. Joe Posnanski is the author of the new book, The Secret of Golf. Joe, welcome back to the show, my friend.
It's great to be. It sounds like I'm on television now, too.
You are on TV. Welcome to TV, yes. Star of stage and screen, yes. Of course, this book comes out as the U.S. Open gets underway, and it's the story of Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus, and I'm so glad. You must have known Tom Watson from your work at the Kansas City Star, but we've had him on the show once or twice. Tom Watson just seems like the nicest man in the world. Yeah.
I mean, it's so interesting with him because there's no question that he has a little bit of an edge to him. Certainly as a competitor, he was edgy. But I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who say that. I mean, he's so gracious, and he's as principled a person as I've ever known. I mean, he holds by some very, very powerful principles, and I think that it makes him unique. He was a very, very fun subject to write about.
So because of knew him a little bit in the Kansas City region, is that sort of where the book sort of originated from? Or
it's exactly where it originated from. I wrote about him hundreds of times, honestly, in Kansas City, and got to know him pretty well, and have long been fascinated just by his story. I mean, this is not someone who came in as a prodigy the way most great golfers do. He came on the tour. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody expected much from him, and he gradually and really through his viewing and studying of Jack Nicklaus, built his game up and ended up challenging Nicklaus and surpassing him and becoming the number one golfer in the world. And it's a great story combining those two, and because in addition to their great rivalry and their great duels that they had, they ended up building this lifelong friendship that still exists today.
The book is called The Secret of Golf: The Story of Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus. The book, Joe, is part storytelling. The book is part golf instruction, and sort of part their story.
Yeah, I tried to do all those things, which made it fun. I break it up into 18 holes. I want it to feel like, hopefully, you're walking the golf course with those two guys. And in between the holes, I include these little secrets that they picked up through the years, so it sort of led to the title. These little secrets of golf, but also secrets of life a little bit that they picked up through the years, how to handle things, how to deal with pressure, how to overcome bad shots, so on and so forth, that hopefully will help. People keep asking me, they see the title and they say, oh, well, is The Secret of Golf in there? And I tell them yes, because I want to sell books. So,
well, you retell a great story about Ben Hogan in the 50s, in which I had no idea that Ben Hogan's story sort of captivated the country in the 50s.
Yeah. It was really in 1947 that he said, he's no longer with us, but he said he found the secret of golf. And of course, at the time he said it, nobody particularly cared, but then he went on to play golf like it had never been played before. And, he got into a terrible car accident that almost killed him. And 2 years later, he won the U.S. Open, basically, almost being unable to walk. And then 2 years after that, he won, the three championships he entered. Sort of a little Ben Hogan Grand Slam. Because you couldn't even enter the fourth one then if you entered those three. So, so he ended up playing this golf, and then he started telling people that he was going to tell them what the secret is. And this became this little national thing where, Life magazine ended up doing a couple of different cover stories about the secret of golf. There was a book put out by Hogan where he said he was giving away the secret, but people said to his last days he did have the secret, but he wasn't going to tell anyone.
Yeah, so it was that's a really great story. Now, the thing about Tom Watson is recently, and I love how you sort of tell the Turnberry story in 1977, and you can't tell the Turnberry 1977 story without telling the Turnberry story of a few years ago, where everyone's heart was broken when Tom Watson didn't win all those years later.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the scope of the book. Is we begin with Tom Watson meeting Jack Nicklaus when he's 17 years old. Go through Turnberry in '77 when they played in the great duel in the sun, probably the greatest one-on-one golf duel in history. They played this otherworldly golf where they left behind the rest of them and were 10 shots in front of everybody and just playing against each other. And then all the way to all these years later, almost 40 years later, 30 years later, Tom Watson at age 59 almost winning the British Open at Turnberry again, and Jack Nicklaus at home in Florida watching it on television with tears in his eyes as he sort of feels a part of it. And I think that was, to me, the most fascinating part of all, is watching this connection grow between two men who at one point in their lives were playing to be the best in the world. And they're the only two that truly understand what it was like to be on that mountaintop, and that's where we try to go.
Joe, I'm going to embarrass you here, but The Soul of Baseball, Paterno, this book, you call yourself a writer, and you have to do that to make a living, but you're really just a very good storyteller.
Well, thank you. That does embarrass me a little bit, but I'm lucky. I get to find these really great stories that sort of happen to, I wouldn't say fall in my lap, but when I get a great opportunity. Tom Watson has never had a book written about him, and was pretty adamant about saying that he never would. He's just a very private person, and I tell this story in the book. I actually reached out to him to tell him I wanted to do this book. I told him this idea I had about him and Jack Nicklaus, and after a long time, he sent me a card in the mail, and my wife brought it to me after she saw it in the mailbox, and she said it was just a little tiny card, and my wife said, "This is the shortest rejection letter anybody's ever gotten." So I was just going to say big no on it, but it didn't. It actually said, "I'll help you any way I can," and that's sort of who Tom is. I think Tom understood the power of this story. I think that deep down he did want it told, and hopefully I did the story justice.
Now, how was it working with Jack Nicklaus? Was he as open as Tom Watson?
Yes, he was more open, but that's just who he is. I mean, he's just a very open-hearted person. And when I was thinking about writing this book, I always felt like, and it turned out this way, that Tom was going to be the tough one. Tom, not because I know Tom so well, so I've talked to him about these things many times before. But I kind of felt like and did find, if I told Jack Nicklaus, "Hey, I'm doing this book," and Tom has agreed to talk to me and be a part of it, that Jack would come on board and do that as well. And he was, and he gave me what he called the longest 10-minute interview in the history of golf writing. So it was a very long one, and he was wonderful as always.
The book is called The Secret of Golf: The Story of Tom Watson, Jack Nicklaus. I love if I can use a term from Donald Rumsfeld, the snowflakes, the little nuggets of tips that you have about grips and all the other little things you have in there. It's sort of a nice combination of stories and tips and this great friendship.
Yeah, I hope that's what it is. I mean, I actually was just on a show not that long ago, and the guy said to me, I took this out to the pool. And I got so engrossed in it that I got sunburned. And I thought, you're not going to get a better compliment than that.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate.
While we still have you, Joe, what are your initial thoughts as you watch this FBI Cardinal hacking story?
I knew you were going to ask me that.
I had to ask you. I had to.
And you have to. Well, my initial thoughts are, I do want to wait. I want to wait and see what's going to happen and where this thing is going. It's obviously bad. I mean, it's obviously something that you don't want the FBI investigating your baseball team. Certainly not for hacking into an opponent's scouting reports or whatever. But we'll see. You know, I one thing that I certainly learned in the Paterno story was, you know, what comes out early isn't usually right, and a lot of it, you need to let the dust settle and figure out exactly what's going on, and I don't think prejudging is fair. It certainly doesn't look good, especially for an organization as classy and as well-respected as the Cardinals are. It doesn't look good, but it's early, and I think it's only fair to let this thing play out.
So people are, you know, you're right, and we only know what's in that New York Times story, and so everyone's speculating, so everyone's full of it because no one knows what they're talking about. But in terms of scandals, in terms of Deflategate and Spygate and Bountygate, and we sort of live in this NFL prism of scandals recently because that's where all the sports scandals come from. But in terms of that, it seems to me like if it's true, this is bigger than all of those because this is corporate espionage.
Yeah. No, look, if it comes down that this was in any way, shape, or form true, that it went up in the organization at all, I think it's way bigger. I mean, you know, we're dealing with federal crime here. I mean, this is bad. The FBI wasn't out there investigating Deflategate. I mean, as silly as that thing was. So, you know, yes, it would. If it indeed this is where it comes down, if it turns out it's, you know, just one guy, you know, kind of hacking around and messing, you know, then I don't know what that means. It's a different thing. But obviously, if the organization is in any way culpable for something that brings the FBI in and federal crimes are involved, it's going to be a very, very nasty scandal.
Joe Posnanski with us. A couple more minutes about his book, The Secret of Golf, the story of Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus. When Jack Nicklaus burst on the scene, he was not beloved. As a matter of fact, he was the villain, was he not?
He was. In fact, he was the villain to Tom Watson, and the reason was Arnold Palmer was king at that time, and I don't think there's ever been a more beloved champion in any sport than Arnold Palmer at that time. He was just everybody adored him, and Jack Nicklaus came on, and he was kind of this pudgy, you know, genius who didn't really show much emotion on the golf course and wasn't especially interesting, and everybody just kind of saw him as a robot that was coming out to destroy Arnold Palmer, and it was nasty. I mean, it was not just you know, golf nasty. I mean, people were you know, swinging, you know, yelling at him during his backswing and booing him, and he was dealing with quite a bit during that time. Which I think is a interesting contrast because, you know, there was Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus have become friends over the years, but it's always been sort of a frosty friendship because they're first rivals. Then you have, you know, 10 years later, you have Jack Nicklaus as the guy who's the king, Tom Watson coming along to dethrone him, and it was a different scene, and I think it's a really different thing because of the warmth that is, you know, Jack Nicklaus and the way he handled defeat, and there was just surrounding him. There was always this level of class, and so you have somebody who not only was able to defeat Jack Nicklaus like Tom Watson did, but do it in such a respectful way that it was just a different kind of rivalry.
Yeah, really interesting how the two dynamic, but also the fact that Watson is such a nice man, and so his core being is so, you know, so rock solid, and he shows it in every way. But he's still a real person. He's just, you know, what a great ambassador he is for golf.
He's a great ambassador for golf, and you know, I get into this a little bit in the book. You know, there was this you know, pretty you know, controversial time last year when he was the captain of the Ryder Cup team, where some of the players said a few things about him and as captain, and it comes down to the fact that he's this deeply principled guy, but is he a competitor. I mean, he does not want to lose in anything and takes losing very, very hard, and probably to an extreme that some of the younger golfers don't fully understand. I mean, it was a different time. he went to go win the Ryder Cup, and losing was not an acceptable option to him. And I'm not sure the other players felt the same way. That's another thing that separated him. He was some kind of competitor.
The book is The Secret of Golf, the story of Tom Watson and Jack Nicklaus. Joe Posnanski. Joe, you're always welcome here. Good luck with the book, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You got it. 925 here, Big 550 KTRS. Joe Posnanski, a great writer, great sports writer, but more than sports, just a great story. Whether you like golf or not, it's just a great story. Now,